station. Let's Talk Antiques Wednesday. Yes, we'll have a slice of that at 22 minutes past the hour. Hey, guys, thanks for being here.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Tell everybody who the Velvet Voices are.
Go ahead, Max.
I'm Lucky, by the way.
I'm Max Northcutt, and here's Ray.
I'm Ray.
Mr.
Seckler.
Seckler,
Ray
thanks
Seckler.
for being here.
And this is Little Dumpling.
Little Dumpling.
Little Dumpling.
When will I grow up to be Big Dumpling?
I've never called him Little Dumpling. A lot of times he comes in the station and I'll say, Big Dave! But I don't do the Little Dumpling.
Lucky's Big Dumpling.
Oh, my.
Lucky Big Dumpling.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm not Lucky.
You know what?
I'm sitting in for Lucky.
She's got a whole lot more hair than Lucky's got.
Yeah, she sure does.
A whole lot better looking.
Oh, stop.
I was looking forward to seeing Lucky this morning because I had my Alabama hat on and everything. But
Yeah.
I took it off in respect
needle him?
for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I figured
Well,
you were a Tennessee.
I saw you guys brought your hardware. Now it's radio and TV, but
I noticed too that
the
we had
boys are packing today.
I noticed too though that you got some good news before the show came on. Your power finally come back on.
I did get word that my
Our
power
power's
came
been
on.
off for a few days. I think it's been off everywhere.
Thanks, Duck River.
That's
Appreciate you very much.
I tell you what, those men work hard. I tell you
Yeah.
though, the city employees, the county, all those emergency people have been working day and night.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
That's when they really earn their money, and you really have to appreciate the work those guys do. Cause
They're kind of like an insurance policy, Max. You don't really think about it until you really need them.
That's right. That's right.
So you boys have some serious shortage.
Well,
you want
Max.
to talk about those first, or you got something else?
No, we're gonna let Max is gonna. We'll just let Max do the talking.
Well, we were going to talk a little bit about the war between the states here locally, who was here, and where they were camped, and of course, I guess for starters, you could talk about the Duck River Defense Line, which was established right after the Battle of Stones River, and it was here for almost 6 months. The Confederates stretched out all the way from Shelbyville to McMinnville.
What year was that, Max?
First half of 1863. They right after the battle, like the 2nd of January of 1863, Bragg pulled the Confederates back to the hills south of Murfreesboro, and that night they built.
I like your music that you talk by.
I turned it down. Take it out and take it out.
It's his first time in radio. He didn't
Anyway,
know to turn
normally I
turn
put it on
off.
vibrate, but anyway, I'm expecting a call from Murfreesboro from the doctor. Anyway, that first night after the Battle of Stones River, those hills out there around Beech Grove are what we call the Middle Tennessee the Tennessee Divide, and it's a string of hills. And the Confederates climbed up on those hills and built bonfires to make the Union soldiers think that there were a lot more of them than actually they were. But then they spread out all the way back to Shelbyville and McMinnville through those hills, and there's probably still some camps there that haven't been found. I'd like to have the time to roam those hills with a detector and look for some of the camps. A lot of them have been found, and I found one near Fairfield that was General Bates' camp, and I brought a couple of items this morning to show you how utilitarian the Confederates had to be. They didn't have as deep a pocket as the Yankee Army, and here is a pre-war smoothbore musket ramrod, and it was turned into a camp implement. They bent it so they could make a hook to possibly grab something out of the fire, or maybe hook on to a pot handle. But anyway, it became a. They left it behind. May have had to leave in a hurry.
That happened a lot, didn't it?
And I forgot the main item, David, the mattock that I was going to show that I found in a trench that I could see some little poor, hungry Confederate soldier digging with this thing. It's like a hoe, and it was forged in a field hospital. I mean, a blacksmith shop, not a field hospital. It was forged and tacked and hammered around with heat, hammered around the handle, and then tacked. And I went off and left it. I'll try to show it some other time. But then here's just odds and ends and things that they would leave behind, some chain and things like this that,
You really wouldn't think they'd leave that and they must have had to leave in a hurry because Max,
yeah,
that piece of chain was probably important to them.
it's very important, but they were in a hurry when they left. But anyway, those camps were scattered all along, and then when the Yankees finally came through, I think it was like the 23rd of June of 1863. It had been raining for a couple of weeks, and the roads were all bogs, and they finally came through Hoover's Gap and Liberty Gap, and
Max, if you don't care, tell people where Hoover's Gap is. That around Beach Grove?
it's right there at Beach Grove. It's the interstate and 41 go through the gap right there at Beach Grove, and what they did was they feigned a direct push on Cheveville over at Guy's Gap, north of Cheveville, and then they came around to the left through Hoover's and Liberty Gap, and kind of they had a couple of days of running artillery battle and pretty rough fighting, but eventually the Confederates pulled back to Bragg's headquarters was in Cheveville first, and then he pulled back to Tullahoma, and then he eventually went to Chattanooga through the Cowan Tunnel and left Middle Tennessee to the Union. I guess what we need to do is let's look at that map, Dave. I want to talk about that. That's right here in Manchester. This map was drawn by Ambrose Bierce. And Ambrose Bierce later on became a well-known author, and they knew him as Bitter Bierce. That was his nickname, was Bitter Bierce, because his stories had ironic and cruel twists to them. But this map shows when the Union came to Manchester, the Union Army, General Hazen wanted a topographic map of the area around Stones River in Manchester. So Ambrose Bierce was a topographic engineer on Hazen's staff. And on this map, it's hard to see on the camera, but it shows west of Manchester. Crichton was another Union general. It shows his headquarters, and then it shows General H's headquarters, and that would have been General Hazen. That was his boss. And it was down there toward off of what we call West High Street. It shows the Higgins Mill. It shows the powder mill that the Yankees burnt and blew up just north of the forks of the Little and Big Duck.
Hey, with that thought, Max, let's take a little break.
So
and come
we
back
left
with
off
that.
at Little and Big Duck. I'll remember that. Certainly. You remember that, Mr.
Yes,
Sackler.
ma'am.
That's your job. All right. You're tuned into your hometown station, Thunder Radio. Let's Talk Antiques continues in a moment.
The Jiffy Burger on the Hillsborough Boulevard in Manchester has been voted as having the best hamburgers in Manchester. Hometown atmosphere, historical memorabilia, and of course those great burgers, salads, chicken, and so much more. It's the Jiffy Burger on the Hillsborough Boulevard in Manchester. Call in orders at 728-4452. You can also order at the convenient outdoor curb service. Hamburgers are made the old-fashioned way at the Jiffy Burger, Manchester's finest hamburgers. Open 7:30 until 9, Monday through Saturday.
We would like to thank Dr. David Florence for supporting Let's Talk Antiques. See Dr. Florence at 804 Kalon Street in Manchester for all of your medical needs. Call 728-5522 for your appointment today. Most insurances accepted.
Thunder Radio, thanks for tuning in. Let's Talk Antiques, fresh, snow edition.
All right.
Good morning, boys.
Let's get back to the map. You know, you was around a little duck and a big duck, wasn't you?
Yeah, the Ambrose, we were talking about Ambrose Bierce doing a map, a local map for General Hazen when they came to town. And a little bit about Ambrose Bierce. He was from Ohio and must have been, pretty good, come from a family with a little money, because he had an education enough to be a topographic engineer. And later on, at Kennesaw, Georgia, he got hit in the head with some shrapnel from artillery fire, and that caused him to have headaches, and they think it might have altered his personality for the rest of his life, that causing him to write the bitter stories that he wrote. And anyway, he became a pretty well-known American author.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he was 70 years old, his life kind of paralleled Mark Twain's. He outlived his wife and daughter, and he was alone, and he decided to go to Mexico to follow Pancho Villa and report on the war in Mexico. And he wrote a friend a kind of a cryptic premonition about what really probably happened to him. He said, I may wind up being lined up against a wall and shot, but I'm going down anyway. But anyway, he disappeared, and they think that's what happened to him. They never found him. But
you know what amazes me, Max, is like that map. They didn't have aerial, so it's amazing to me how they lay that out. Especially, I don't know what he couldn't have took a whole lot of time doing it because of they were not they weren't stationed here for 5 years or 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, they were taught a quick method. And
what was that, Max?
Well, it was a combination of things. They would find they would go up on either a church or a courthouse steeple or a hill where they could have a commanding view,
Mm-hmm.
and they would turn angles and then they when it came to measuring distance, they would use things like a horse's gait at a certain speed.
Mm-hmm.
They would time it to tell how long it took him to go a mile or half a mile or whatever.
So
and
they'd actually use the horse
and they would use
as a measurement, his trot.
Wagon wheel revolutions, tie a rag on a wheel, count it as they traveled. But I would imagine Ambrose Bierce probably did a lot of this on horseback, and he had a compass.
Mm-hmm.
He had a Jacob staff where he could turn angles, and it's supposed to be a topographic, and it shows contours around up down the rivers.
Well, let me ask you something, Max. You're a surveyor by trade. Would you think that thing's pretty accurate? Just looking at it.
It's pretty accurate. It's
pretty accurate.
He called Little Duck Taylor's Creek,
but it is Little Duck,
and it shows Grindstone Hollow,
right?
Which comes through town
Mm-hmm.
and runs into the Little Duck.
So over on West High, they actually had a camp then.
Well, they had their headquarters. There were two generals camped there that had their headquarters.
Do you know about where the headquarters was?
It's shown over there on the north side of what we would call West High now.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there a residence or is it a vacant field or?
I don't think there's any structures that were there then.
No, but I mean, is there a structure there today that you could?
There probably is, but I can't really tell exactly where it would have been.
Uh-huh.
It shows General Hazen's headquarters down off of West High, what we would call West High now.
Mm-hmm.
Shows him off halfway between West High and the river.
Huh.
So it must have been something down there, for a place good enough for him to be comfortable with his headquarters. But anyway, that's just a touch of how they got us, how they touched us locally,
Well, there's a lot more local stories you're going to be telling us too, aren't there?
Well, you want to go to that case of the things there that show it to Philip and the folks, the viewers on the camera. Those are just some odds and ends that were found in some camps, some of the local camps. Some Confederate stuff and some Union stuff. There's some.
Now, you dug most of this, right?
Yes.
You dug it and I traded for it. That's the way I like it.
Yeah. There's some.
There wasn't no sweating or nothing, Max.
Union buttons, mini balls of different calibers, some small rusty iron boot buckles.
Knapsack hooks. Is that what that is over to the right?
Yeah, there's knapsack hooks and boot buckles that weren't military issue. They were probably worn on boots where they came from home with them. You know,
all Confederate soldiers didn't have uniform stuff, did they, man?
they didn't have a lot of stuff. They didn't have. They like I said, showing these
Heavy thing.
this
Now,
ramrod.
do you mind saying where you dug a lot of that? Do you?
This U.S. plate came from Concord Church between here and Tullahoma,
Right.
Over there near Hickerson Station.
Right,
School.
over there close to where I live.
It was right up on the slope above the railroad. There was a trestle there, and they were guarding that trestle. And some of those bullets, they came from different camps, you know, different places. Some of that came from Bobo's Crossroads, which is out there.
There was a battle out there, wasn't
There
it?
was a skirmish there, a rear action skirmish when it's where
Hand
Captain.
me that, Rand. I'll move it out of your way.
That's where Captain Starnes got killed. He was riding with Forrest, and he was doing a rear action trying to slow the Yankees up while Bragg pulled out of Tullahoma.
Right.
And his men told him he was getting too exposed. He was exposing himself too much, and a sniper got him. But there's a marker out there on 55 there at Hawker Smith Road.
And he was a lieutenant?
He was a captain.
Captain.
He'd been a doctor before the war. He's buried up in Williamson County, south of 840, up there below Triune. But anyway, let's talk about these swords if we've got time.
How much time we got, Tiffany? 2 minutes before we're going to the break? Well, why don't we come back? How much time, when we come back after the break, how much time we got, Tiffany?
How much time would you like?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that let's talk a couple more minutes about some of the stuff. You know, you was talking about Tullahoma, and I know around Jackson Street and stuff. Well, let's talk the next couple minutes about that type of stuff, and then when we come back from the break, we'll talk about the swords.
Well, one of the, I guess when you mention Tullahoma, the first thing I think of is the Confederate camps up and down Rock Creek.
Right.
And the late Tommy Allen, who was a friend of mine, I think he was chairman of the school board.
He's a school teacher, too.
School teacher, along with his wife, Joyce. Tommy hunted those Confederate camps that were scattered up and down Rock Creek, and they really yielded some nice Confederate items. Another thing, if we've got a little bit of time on, Tommy's niche, or his strong suit, or the area that he was strong in, was trash pits and privies. He'd get in there and he'd find glass. He'd find cathedral wine and beer bottles. And his wife had a window box over the kitchen sink that had probably no telling what those bottles were worth. He dug a lot of glass, inkwells, you know.
Right, but he also had a lot of, like, the buckles.
He dug a lot of those buckles in those Confederate camps up and down Rock Creek.
Now, South Jackson School, I know I went to school there. You know, my first half of my life, you know, I lived in Tullahoma until I was 15. Then I moved up here. But actually, there were mini ball stuff around South Jackson School. So I don't know if they camped there or what.
Well,
but I just remember as a kid seeing mini balls when it rained hard.
They actually had a ford out there around North Washington. Going out to where the old Legion, American Legion,
Right.
in that area. There was actually a fort.
My uncle lives right there close to that.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when he was digging his footer for a garage, he found a buckle.
There were a lot of buckles out there in those yards. That was, if you had time, you could go yard to yard. There was a guy that used to live here that did that. He was retired, and he took his dog and a sack lunch with him, and he'd knock on doors and get permission, and he'd hunt those yards.
Well, this was a CS buckle he found.
Yeah.
A couple of them.
Yeah.
Just digging a footer. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about these swords.
You're tuned into your hometown station. Let's Talk Antiques continues on Thunder Radio.
The Jiffy Burger on the Hillsborough Boulevard in Manchester has been voted as having the best hamburgers in Manchester. Hometown atmosphere, historical memorabilia, and of course those great burgers, salads, chicken, and so much more. It's the Jiffy Burger on the Hillsborough Boulevard in Manchester. Call in orders at 728-4452. You can also order at the convenient outdoor curb service. Hamburgers are made the old-fashioned way at the Jiffy Burger, Manchester's finest hamburgers. Open 7:30 until 9, Monday through Saturday.
We would like to thank Dr. David Florence for supporting Let's Talk Antiques. See Dr. Florence at 804 Kalon Street in Manchester for all of your medical needs. Call 728-5522 for your appointment today. Most insurances accepted.
Thunder Radio, live and local. Hey, good snowy morning to you. Let's Talk Antiques continues on your hometown station. Dave, how long have you been doing this show over here?
16 years.
16 years this fall.
Yeah.
He's new.
Yeah,
Max, I'm going to pull the sword out and show the viewers.
Yeah, Dave, this is a Confederate saber that was made in Mobile, Alabama by James Connings. And don't really know, there's some initials on it, TH, and I told Dave we'd have to know more about, the outfit possibly to get some feel for how to identify this guy.
It's a lieutenant.
He's a lieutenant, and there's so many possibilities that it would be hard to find out who this guy was. And then we've also got a Union sword, and this one was made by Emerson and Silver in Benton, New Jersey. This is a Union saber.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any identifying marks or initials or anything on it.
Boys, let me back up just a minute. I did a quick Google. James Conning, Dauphin and Water Street, Mobile, produced many examples of edged weapons, which included fine officer swords as well as cavalry and artillery sabers under contract for the state of Alabama.
There you go. So really, that's a start. You could go through the all of the Alabama units. Possibly start with cavalry. A lot of the officers carried a saber, even though they weren't in the cavalry. But you could start by going through the rosters of the Alabama outfits, and you might stumble on a lieutenant with those initials, and then take it from there.
Yeah.
But I guess that'd be the way to start.
Now this one here I've had for probably 20 years or longer. This other one here I've had about 10 when we talk about it, the U.S. Tiffany, did you have something else to say about it?
You're going to have to remind me where that one. Emerson and Silver came from where?
Benton, New Jersey.
All right, let me take a look.
Okay, let me pull that one out. Are you ready to talk about the U.S. sword?
Yeah. I've already mentioned it a little bit, but I don't. Other than I don't think there's any identifying marks on it, though, is there, Dave?
Yes.
There is?
No, it don't have no initials on it.
What about the blade? Is there anything on the blade?
Yeah, it does say it does have the manufacturer on the blade, and then it does have some other things like the foundry marks or whatever right here. I really can't tell, Max. Maybe you know what these marks mean. It does say U.S. on it, and see those marks right there? Yeah. But be careful and don't don't hit Tiffany in the head.
Don't do no ISIS moves.
It has DFM 1864, so that would be the initials of the actual craftsman that made the sword.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull this. Just pulling out, I'll just have an overview of it here. Looks basically like the other.
Those swords are loud.
Some people specialize. Now, David's got a little bit of everything, but some people,
thanks to you, Max,
specialize in something like these swords or sabers, and others would say, for example, collect Bowie knives. There was a Confederate Bowie knife issued to a lot of the infantrymen. There's buttons and buckles, plates, uniforms. Paper,
Confederate buttons. When you're talking about, what is the most expensive Confederate? Was it the droop wing eagle or whatever you was talking about one time, or is there other?
It's not the most expensive. The ones that would be the most expensive would be the ones that are the rarest,
which are
harder to find.
You said something about gold wash and silver wash.
There was some buttons that specimens that there's only been, say, for example, 4 or 5 or less found.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of things that were I've got a couple of those droop wing eagles that I found that are, I don't know exactly what they're worth now, but they're kind of hard to come by because they were locally made. I think they were made in Nashville, and they don't have any back mark. but we know that they're Confederate, and they were manufactured for the Confederate Army, or the officers' buttons. And the star buttons from Mississippi and Texas, and the Louisiana Pelican buttons, they're some of the higher dollar buttons, and they're going for some pretty good prices now. The Yankee buttons were mass produced, and the quality wasn't as good, and they don't bring as much. There's
a whole lot more of them.
More of them found, but now they're starting to. I'd say by now, some of them are starting to deteriorate if they're still in the ground, because 30 years ago, they were starting to deteriorate. They were in pretty bad shape.
Well, I remember when I first started collecting Civil War items that the U.S. buckle, you could buy a good one from between 65 and 125, and I'm sure we're gonna go to eBay and look up some of these, but I'm sure they're a whole lot more expensive now. Now the Confederate is a different story. Maybe you can touch on the prices of like a CSA Georgia rectangle.
Yeah, the CSA rectangle is kind of a crown jewel of what the hunters want to find, and then of course the CS oval, and then they have different borders, the rope border, and they're made by different ways, with stamped, pressed brass, and
were they all blacksmithed out, or were they actually made in a factory? I know some of the stuff was blacksmithed out.
Yeah, just within the last year or two, there's a guy named Joe Hale who found a place where apparently they were making them, and he found several of them, and they're worth quite a bit of money. But
now he found these at an old blacksmith shop.
It looks that way. They think that's what it was.
Dave, what I see on eBay, that the highest dollar selling buckle is a Civil War Virginia militia buckle, $2,227.
Now, is this completed auction, Tiffany?
That is a sold auction.
Okay,
highest.
and what about, do you see a U.S. buckle? You just scroll on down and talk about, if you see a buckle.
It would be labeled U.S.?
Yes.
I'm seeing different states.
Yeah, well, go ahead and talk about some of them then.
Well, here is original rare Civil War soldiers, OVM.
It's Ohio Volunteer Militia.
All right.
Those are not those bring pretty good price.
$880.
Yeah.
Here's a California Gold Rush tongue and wreath belt buckle, $7.99. I came up with Civil War. Here's a State of New York Soldiers SNY belt buckle, $601.01. Now, a lot of these belt buckles are attached to the belt still.
Well, that's
Buckle
rare
strap.
to find one that's still with unless it be one that's never been.
They wouldn't have been in the ground.
No.
They would have been non-dug. They would have been in somebody's trunk or
right.
Yeah, here's this is their description. Rare Civil War era lion head sword belt and buckle, snake design clasps, Southern, $916. Sold auction. Here's a rare Civil War officer's model 1851 sword, saber belt, and buckle shoulder strap, $565.
Look, what's those?
Here's a Civil War belt buckle set of 4. Virginia 1st Regiment. You're going to have to help me out with some of these letters. Civil War collection of 4 belt buckles. Wide array of states. Fought in the Civil War 1861 to 1865. Cannot grade the condition. Different branches of the service. There's a Confederate States Navy buckle, a Volunteer Maine Militia buckle, a Virginia 1st Regiment buckle, and a K buckle. K? No?
I don't.
What'd they bring, Tiffany?
All 4, with no authentication, sold for $472.
And you said it's in poor condition too, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, they look pretty rough. Yeah.
Which
There's no shiny part left on those buckles.
Let's take a break and.
We're gonna have to take more than a break. We're gonna take a break for about a week.
Okay. Is that like a 7-day break?
Yeah, we're gonna have to take one of those kind of breaks. We're just plumb out of time.
Well, Max is a good talker. That's why we've. What do you think, Ray? He talked us right out of a
Good
show.
job.
Sorry
Yes,
about that.
he is.
We were a little short on time. We had to close down a ton of stuff this morning with the weather. But boys, next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And I want to remind folks that they can watch this radio show, which is an odd thing to say. Watch this show
Yeah.
on Charter Channel 193 at 6 o'clock tonight, 9 p.m. on Friday, 3 p.m. on Sunday, unless it's preempted for something special. Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So Charter.
And
check us out on YouTube
and Facebook.
and Facebook. Look for Charter. Yeah.
Charter Channel 6.
Charter Channel 6.
Peahead Production.
Peahead Productions. Thanks for tuning into your hometown station, Thunder Radio. Bye, boys.
Keep them letters and cards coming in.
That's it.